Less than 1 hour after shooting Abraham Lincoln, John Wilkes Booth reached a bridge leading out of Washington. The city was under military control. The bridge was closed. A sentry stopped him. Booth gave him an excuse, and somehow, Lincoln's assassin was allowed to ride into the darkness. This is the 12-day hunt for John Wilkes Booth. On April 14, 1865, President Abraham Lincoln was watching a comedy at Ford's Theater. Washington was celebrating the approaching end of the Civil War. Then, a famous actor entered the presidential box. Booth raised a pistol behind Lincoln and fired. The president collapsed. Booth slashed Major Henry Rathbone with a knife, leapt onto the stage, and injured his left leg during his escape. But he kept moving. He raced through the theater's back door, mounted a waiting horse, and disappeared into the night. At the Navy Yard Bridge, the sentry had not yet heard about the assassination. Booth was allowed to cross into Maryland. Minutes later, his accomplice, David Harold, crossed the same bridge. By the time Washington understood what had happened, both men were gone. They collected weapons and supplies from the Surratt Tavern, then reached the home of Dr. Samuel Mudd. Mudd treated Booth's fractured leg, but the fugitives could not move quickly. Wanted posters spread across the country. A total reward of $100,000 was offered for Booth and 2 alleged accomplices. Soldiers, detectives, and cavalry units searched roads, farms, and forests. For 4 nights, Booth and Harold hid inside a Maryland pine thicket. They could not light a fire. They could barely move without being seen. A Confederate agent brought them food and newspapers. Booth opened the papers expecting praise. Instead, he discovered that much of the South viewed him not as a hero, but as a murderer. Their first attempt to cross the Potomac River failed. Lost in the darkness, they accidentally landed back in Maryland. On their second attempt, they finally reached Virginia. But the manhunt was closing in. Before dawn on April 26th, Union cavalry surrounded a tobacco barn at Richard Garrett's farm. David Harold surrendered. Booth refused. The soldiers ordered him to come out alive. He would not move. So they set the barn on fire. Flames climbed the wooden walls. Smoke filled the darkness. Inside, Booth held a carbine. Through a gap in the barn, Sergeant Boston Corbett watched him move. Corbett believed Booth was preparing to fire. He aimed and pulled the trigger. The bullet struck Booth in the neck, leaving him paralyzed. Soldiers dragged him from the burning barn and carried him to the farmhouse porch. For hours, the man who had thrown Washington into terror slowly died. Booth asked the soldiers to raise his hands so he could see them. He stared at them and whispered, "Useless, useless." At sunrise, John Wilkes Booth was dead. He was 26 years old. For 12 days, thousands had searched for Lincoln's killer. The assassin was finally gone, but he would never stand trial, and the full truth behind the conspiracy would remain debated for generations.